The Resident Evil Raccoon City incident is one of the most iconic events in the series, introducing us to many fan-favorite characters, showcasing some of the deadliest bioweapons ever created, as well as setting the stage for many tragic outbreaks to come. So in this video, we will be diving into the complete story of the incident, starting from the events that led up to the disaster, all the way to the town's inevitable destruction. So without further ado, here is the entire Raccoon City timeline explained. The story of Resident Evil begins on the evening of July 23rd, 1998, where an Umbrella-owned train called the Ecliptic Express travels through the Arklay Mountains, where several Umbrella facilities are located. Observed from a mountaintop by a mysterious man singing a choir song, the train is suddenly attacked by a swarm of leeches, which break through the windows and infect all the passengers with the T-virus. This virus was created by Umbrella with the goal of eliminating the need for a large-scale conventional army, and would be used to create many bioweapons planned for military use. 2 hours after this incident, STAR's Bravo team flies over the same mountains with a mission to investigate a series of unexplained cannibalistic murders and animal attacks that have been occurring in the region. However, an engine failure in the helicopter leads to an emergency landing. Upon landing, Bravo team begins to explore the surrounding woods, while RPD pilot Kevin Dooley stays behind to fix the helicopter. Upon searching the area, Rebecca Chambers points the group to a wrecked military police vehicle with 2 passengers deceased. Upon further examination, Rebecca finds a court-ordered document of a prisoner named Billy Cohen, who was being transported to a base to receive his death penalty. Assuming that Billy killed the 2 guards and escaped, Captain Enrico Marini quickly orders the team to search for him. While searching the Raccoon Forest, Rebecca discovers that the Ecliptic Express train from earlier has come to a halt and its lights are out. Upon further investigation, she finds bloodstains on the sheets and is suddenly approached by a zombified passenger who awakens from his slumber. More zombies soon surround her, but she manages to escape and heads towards the front of the train. While she is examining a dead corpse, prisoner Billy Cohen sneaks up behind and holds Rebecca at gunpoint with the gun he took from his transporters. Rebecca tries to arrest Billy, but he decides to be uncooperative and refuses to be detained, instead deciding to walk away upon finding out that Rebecca works for STARS. Suddenly, Bravo team member Edward Dewey jumps through the window after being seriously injured from BOWs in the surrounding forest, and he warns Rebecca to be careful shortly before passing out. Zombie dogs soon appear and attack Rebecca, but she is able to quickly take them out and proceed to the middle of the train. Here, Bravo team member Enrico Marini contacts her on radio and informs her of the new documents of Billy Cohen, suggesting that he was sentenced to death for the murder of 23 people and was taken to a psychiatric hospital. He then warns Rebecca to keep her guard up right before the radio cuts out. Shortly after, Rebecca comes across Billy again, where he now tries to reason with her to work together after realizing the true danger they are in. Rebecca declines and proceeds upstairs herself, where she encounters another man in the very back, which upon closer examination turns into a pile of leeches. These leeches quickly swarm her, but just before they can inflict damage, Billy arrives just in time to save her from harm, further emphasizing how important it is to work together if the two want any chance of surviving. Later, they witness a strange man on the mountain, surrounded by leeches, singing a choir song. The train begins to move in what is discovered to be an operation by the Umbrella Security Services Delta team. They have been tasked by Dr. Albert Wesker and Dr. William Birkin to move the train for investigation. As Rebecca further explores the train, she comes face to face with a giant mutated scorpion BOW that breaks through the top of the train and lunges at her. However, she is quickly able to eliminate the creature and progress further into the train. Shortly after, the 2 Umbrella soldiers controlling the train are attacked by leeches and quickly turned into zombies, leaving no one in control of the train. As it moves through the mountains, the train begins to pick up speed, and realizing that they might derail, Billy and Rebecca manipulate the brakes on the front and rear of the train in hopes to stop the vehicle. The train slows down, but it's too late to prevent an accident as it drives through a cliff and into an underground train station, derailing in the process. Upon exploring, the two quickly find themselves in a large facility, which used to be an Umbrella Pharmaceuticals training school. Here they learn about the T-virus and how its origins come from an ancient West African virus known as Progenitor. Once Umbrella founders Oswald E. Spencer and James Marcus discovered Progenitor's ability to repair dead cells, plans were quickly made to use this virus to create a new race of superhuman beings. After the many gruesome and disturbing experiments were completed with their test subjects, the T-virus was eventually born. As Rebecca and Billy continue to explore, Birkin and Wesker monitor their movements via CCTV, but a mysterious man quickly intercepts the feed and reveals that he was responsible for contaminating the train, claiming that it was part of his plan for getting revenge on Umbrella. He then accuses Birkin and Wesker of betraying Marcus, with both of them being involved in his murder 10 years ago. Shortly after, Rebecca and Billy continue to explore the training school until a giant centipede bioweapon sneaks up and grabs a hold of Rebecca. Luckily, Billy was there and able to defeat the creature, freeing Rebecca in the process. From there, the mysterious man spots Rebecca on the CCTV and sends out the Eliminator bioweapons to attack her. One tracks her down and bites her in the torture chamber, and during this confrontation, the floor gives way, leaving Rebecca hanging on for her life. However, Billy soon after hears her cries over radio and rushes to her aid, saving her just in time before she could fall. After this, Rebecca finally gives in and demands Billy to tell her the truth about what happened to him. He explains that his Marine unit suffered casualties due to faulty intelligence when searching for a guerrilla base in an African jungle. His leader ordered them to fire on innocent villagers in the area, but he refused to take part. He was then framed by the unit, with the court-martial finding him guilty to cover up the other scandals. Meanwhile, Birkin and Wesker begin their own plan to deal with the mysterious man, whom they believe is Marcus brought back to life. They consider him a significant threat and begin preparations to activate the facility's self-destruct device to blow up the training school and the man with it. Birkin stays behind to continue work on the G-virus strain, while Wesker begins to leave in order to pursue his next mission of luring the STARS team to the Arclay laboratory to collect combat data. Billy and Rebecca then proceed to an abandoned church, where they face off against an aggressive bat bioweapon and proceed to take an elevator down into an abandoned laboratory, which was used by Marcus for his T-virus research. Here, Billy investigates Marcus's study and discovers a photograph of him in his younger years, looking exactly like the mysterious man. He then theorizes that the man is rather Marcus's son or grandson. Ready to leave the laboratory on an underground cable car, Billy and Rebecca are attacked by one of Marcus's Eliminator bioweapons. During the fight, the creature lunges at Billy and causes him to go down a ledge and into an underground stream. While Rebecca looks over the edge to spot Billy, a leech man sneaks up behind her ready to attack. Luckily, she turns around just in time and manages to dodge the creature and flee using the cable car, leading her to the Umbrella chemical plant located downhill from the training school. Heading down a large train elevator, Rebecca reaches Nest, the site of Birkin's own bioweapons research. There, she runs into Bravo team member Enrico, who has infiltrated Nest through the Arclay Labs subway tunnel. He is confused as to why the rest of the team isn't there, and decides they should head back to find where they went. Rebecca refuses to go, as she wants to find Billy and make sure he escapes the lab. Enrico reminds her that he can't be saved either way, but he gives in and lets her stay to find him while he returns to the lab. Soon after, Rebecca is confronted by the T-001, Umbrella USA's Tyrant prototype, which has been released by the mysterious man. The creature was a formidable foe, but Rebecca manages to halt the creature and continue her search for Billy. As she delves deeper into Nest, Rebecca eventually spots him in the middle of the water, holding onto some concrete to prevent the rapids from pushing him away. However, a mysterious creature pushes Billy off the concrete, causing the rapids to take him way out of Rebecca's sight. Refusing to give up, she continues to pursue Billy and eventually finds him washed up on the floors of the water treatment plant. When he regains consciousness, he notices that the decking is covered in skeletons, which leads him to conclude that Marcus had also dumped them in the water. As they continue to explore the area, the tyrant Rebecca had previously fought returns and enters a battle with the pair. Rebecca and Billy team up to take the creature down with ease and proceed further into the treatment plant, where they eventually come face to face with a mysterious man. Here he reveals to them his true origins. It turns out that he is actually the Queen Leech, which was a mutant test subject created by Marcus in 1988. Marcus was killed by the USS on Spencer's orders, and Birkin and Wesker were sent in to steal his research data. Marcus was then dumped in the water, and the leech entered his body, consuming his brain and gaining his memories. The Queen Leech now sees itself as Marcus resurrected through divine work, and seeks to use its powers to get its revenge on Umbrella and bring hell to the world. The creature then mutates uncontrollably into a giant leech, and begins its confrontation with Billy and Rebecca. After halting the creature, the pair manage to escape up a cargo elevator that takes them back up to the area where the training school was located. Meanwhile, Wesker makes his way through the facility and is eventually confronted by the T-001, which he quickly defeats. Making his way to the underground train station, he comes face to face with Umbrella executive Sergei Vladimir. The two have a brief argument, which leads to Sergei sending one of his tyrant bodyguards after Wesker in hopes to teach him a lesson. After a quick battle, Birkin activates the self-destruct system, allowing Wesker to flee and continue on to his next mission. Elsewhere, Billy and Rebecca proceed up an elevator, where they then spot the Queen Leech, now mutated even further, beginning to chase them up the elevator, ultimately facing off against the creature in a large warehouse used for helicopter cargo transport. Realizing that the creature is sensitive to light, Rebecca manipulates the controls to the warehouse's retractable roof, halting the Queen Leech in the process. Billy then fires at the creature with a magnum, causing it to fall down the elevator shaft just as the treatment plant explodes along with the training school. Seeing the explosions, the pair make a run for it and manage to flee the building just in time before it completely explodes. Making their way to a cliff edge in the Arklay Mountains, Rebecca spots the mansion Enrico told her about and now knows where to go. Knowing Billy will have to be detained and sent for execution on murders he didn't commit, Rebecca takes his dog tag and declares him dead. He agrees to faking his death and walks out into the forest alone. Rebecca then proceeds to the Spencer mansion to meet up with Bravo team. Here, she falls asleep in an uncomfortable bed resting from her last battle, and has a nightmare where she comes face to face with a massive bioweapon snake. Rebecca is eventually woken up by Bravo team member Richard Eichen and asks him why she couldn't find Bravo team at the rendezvous. Eichen then informs her that they were attacked and the others may be hiding or even deceased. The two then proceed to search for Enrico Marini, captain of Bravo team, in hopes to find some answers. On their way, the pair are attacked by spiders and zombies, causing the two to jump down a hole in a loose floorboard and stumble onto the spider's nest. After a short fight, they reach the courtyard through the underground passages below and are attacked by bees and other creatures. They eventually reach the door back to the mansion, where they then witness Sergei Vladimir exiting the mansion with a tyrant bioweapon prototype carried by one of his Ivan bodyguards. Not long after, Rebecca and Richard are attacked and pursued through the mansion by a massive snake bioweapon named Yawn. Chasing the pair to the mansion library, the creature engages in one last brawl. Richard ultimately saves Rebecca from the Yawn by jumping in front of it. He gets shaken around in the creature's jaws as he is infected with its poison, ultimately being thrown out and slammed to the ground when Rebecca fires at the creature. After the Yawn leaves the area, Rebecca examines and comforts Richard, as he is badly injured and infected with the creature's poison. Soon after, STAR's Alpha team arrives to investigate the sudden disappearance of Bravo team, as well as investigate a series of cannibalistic homicides conducted by an unidentified group of people. While flying around the Arklay Mountains, Alpha team spots Bravo team's wrecked helicopter and lands nearby to begin their investigation. Alpha team member Joseph Frost is first to reach the helicopter and discovers the mutilated body of pilot Kevin Dooley, causing him to fall back in complete shock. As the group continues their search in the woods, Joseph Frost is ambushed by a pack of mutant dogs, and his body is completely ripped apart. As Joe watches in complete shock, one of the dogs turns her way and begins to dart towards her. Chris arrives just in time to fire at the creature, and the two begin to flee the area. In the commotion, pilot Brad Vickers takes off, stranding the remaining 4 members of Alpha Team behind. Once the zombie dogs quickly catch up to the two, Chris prepares for the worst, but luckily Wesker arrives just in time to fire at the creature. He then guides the two and team member Barry Burton to a nearby mansion, and they are all able to make it just in time before the creatures can reach them. Here, the 4 STARS officers split up and begin to search the building. Investigating a gunshot near the dining room, Bravo team member Kenneth J. Sullivan is found dying of a fatal throat injury, having been ripped apart by a zombie. Exploring further into the mansion, the team is ambushed by more zombies that make several attempts for their lives. Bravo team member Forrest Spire is eventually found on a balcony seemingly dead, but he quickly gets up as a zombie and is quickly eliminated by Alpha team. Richard Eichen is found poisoned and injured from yawn, but quickly recovers once he receives a serum. However, Richard is killed shortly after when he risks his life to save Alpha Team. Chris eventually discovers Rebecca while exploring the mansion, but she is limited mostly to the medical storerooms to offer treatment for injuries. Meanwhile, Joe works with Barry in investigating the mansion and begins to suspect that something is wrong about him due to his movements. Once the team gathers 4 masks and places them accordingly, a coffin drops to reveal the Crimson Head prototype, which awakes from his slumber and makes an attempt on their lives. As time passes in the investigation, the officers become aware that the mansion is part of a base operated by Umbrella Pharmaceuticals for viral research. Once the Queen Leech arrived to the lab, it manipulated an accident, leading to the entire facility staff being infected with the T-virus, while all the bioweapons that were created began to escape into the forest. In further search, Alpha Team learns that the mansion was built by George Trevor, and how he and his family were abducted by Umbrella in the 1960s and used as guinea pigs in the research of the progenitor virus. The daughter Lisa Trevor is still alive, having been kept as a human test subject for years, though she has been driven mad and horrifically mutated. Because of her regenerative properties from the virus, the STARS officers are forced to avoid her every encounter. Once the team reaches the nearby dormitory building, they are then attacked by a giant mutated plant. Once defeated, the team heads to the basement below, where they are met with massive bioweapon sharks lurking in the waters. Here, the team drains the water and electrocutes the mother shark in order to retrieve a key to progress further. Making it back to the dormitory, Wesker arrives and gives updates on the current situation, giving orders to explore the mansion further and hopes to uncover more about the investigation. Making it back to the mansion, a hunter bioweapon sneaks up behind the officers and engages in battle, but is quickly taken down or avoided. Not long after, the team finds Yawn and faces it in a fight one last time, finally putting down the creature for good. Eventually progressing to the courtyard's underground area, Bravo Team Captain Enrico Marini is discovered injured. He informs the team that there is a traitor within STARS that's responsible for their casualties, just before he is assassinated by an unknown person who quickly escapes. After running from massive boulders and defeating a giant spider bioweapon, the officers head back to the mansion. Here, Chris saves Rebecca from a hunter bioweapon just before the creature reaches her. Proceeding beneath the mansion, the officers face off with Lisa Trevor one final time, and once they push off the boulders to reveal Lisa's mother's corpse, she quickly grabs the skull and falls off the cliff edge. Moving into the laboratory, the investigation comes to a close, as the nature of the virus research is finally understood to have been part of illegal bioweapons research on behalf of the United States military. Captain Wesker is discovered to be a double agent that is working for Umbrella, and was ordered to lure the STARS members to the mansion to test the bioweapons' effectiveness against armed soldiers. He was also ordered to destroy the laboratory in order to eradicate any incriminating material that would reveal the true intentions of Umbrella. After revealing his true motives, Wesker wakes the T-002 Tyrant, with plans on using it to kill the other STARS members. However, he turns on Wesker instead and impales him with his claws. After the officers halt the Tyrant, the laboratory's self-destruct system is activated, and the 4 remaining STARS members, Barry, Rebecca, Chris, and Jill, rush to the helipad to alert pilot Brad Vickers to their need for rescue. The Tyrant confronts them again on the helipad as the helicopter arrives, but is destroyed by a direct hit from a rocket that was sent from Brad. The STARS members then fly away over the mountains and escape just as the Spencer mansion explodes. Prior to the explosion, Wesker awakes in the underground lab, having been resurrected by a special virus sample that he injected in himself earlier. Upon discovering that the Tyrant has been destroyed and the mansion's self-destruct system has been activated, Wesker attempts to get Umbrella's data, but realizes that it's been backed up to a supercomputer by Sergei Vladimir. Furthermore, his access privileges to the mainframe system have been revoked by an AI known as Red Queen. With minutes to spare, Wesker changes his plans and fights his way out of the mansion. At the very end, he finds the exit blocked by Lisa Trevor, who had survived the fall and was looking for a way out. After engaging in a battle with the creature, a chandelier above breaks free, causing it to fall down and crush Lisa. Wesker then escapes the mansion just before it explodes. A few months later, William Birkin finally completes the G-Virus and plans to betray Umbrella by selling his new virus to the US military in exchange for an asylum for him and his family. Having moles within the military, Umbrella's suspicions were confirmed, and a USS squad was sent out on a race to confiscate the virus first. On the night of September 22nd, Alpha Team leader Hunk arrives at the facility with a subordinate to obtain the virus. In the standoff, Birkin is gunned down with automatic fire after attempting to resist. Alpha Team then retrieves the case containing T and G samples and begins to escape the sewers and head to their extraction point. After they leave, the injured Birkin infects himself with one remaining G sample. However, the virus doesn't properly stabilize in his body, making him unable to become a G human, and instead begin transforming into a large and powerful G mutant. Intent on vengeance, Birkin follows the USS into the sewers, and they are all either killed or seriously injured. To guarantee no more samples are at risk of theft, Birkin proceeds to eat all of the G samples. In the process, he also destroys several T samples, allowing rats to consume them and spread the virus into the city's water supply. The following day, 10 patrons in a bar are listening to news reports of increased violence in the city. The bar's cook named Will is collecting dishes when an odd-looking man walks in. Curious, Will approaches the man, only for him to suddenly bite him on the neck. Will then forces the crazy man out and locks the door as multiple zombies begin beating against the glass and door of the bar. After witnessing this bizarre occurrence, a group of survivors, including an injured cop named Bob, begin to head upstairs to escape, blocking off doorways with wooden boards in the process. Minutes later, a group of zombies break into the bar and begin to rip Will apart as he was too injured to make his way upstairs. Once the survivors make it to the rooftop, Officer Bob's situation worsens as he can now barely walk, and he also says he's developing hunger for flesh. Unable to move on, Bob shoots himself to prevent mutating into a zombie. Once the remaining survivors hear an RPD officer calling for an evacuation, the group then begins to head to the area. However, RPD quickly loses control of the situation due to the number of zombies, and with no other option, Officer Raymond Douglas leads the group into an alleyway. Sadly, a group of zombies get a hold of Raymond and begin tearing at his flesh. He uses his last moments of life to alert the survivors of a gas tanker nearby, and they proceed to leak the gas and set the area ablaze, eliminating all nearby zombies in the process. From there, the group makes their way into a storm drain and exits at the Apple Inn, where they then meet RPD officer Dorian and 2 more survivors. Dorian evacuates the survivors, but is quickly halted by barricades, causing the group to travel on foot. The survivors walk past Raccoon Mall and discover an ongoing police operation to destroy Main Street and eliminate hundreds of zombies with bombs. The police operation goes south when the RPD officers are killed, forcing the group to assemble the detonator themselves and wipe out the zombies. Soon after, police reinforcements arrive to secure the area, and the group of survivors begin to drive away with Dorian's police van. Elsewhere in the city, the Raccoon Fire Department has begun responding to multiple different fires that have broken out throughout the city, one of which being at the Apple Inn has caused multiple different rooms and hallways in the building to become engulfed in flames. 2 firefighters arrive and enter the Apple Inn to put out the fires both inside and next door to the building that threaten to consume it, and to search for any survivors. During the operation, several survivors from Jack's bar find themselves surrounded by hordes of zombies on the streets of Raccoon City. Sprinting through an alleyway, they become trapped when they find zombies blocking them in from either end. With nowhere else to go, they choose to enter a nearby door that leads them into the Apple Inn's central courtyard garden. Meanwhile, the two firefighters go in to inspect the boiler room of the Apple Inn. After noticing the boiler showed signs of malfunction, the two retreat but are too late to avoid an explosion. The survivors enter the building shortly after to find the deceased firefighters and try using their radios to call for help. However, they are unable to get through. As the survivors travel around the burning hotel, they run into various zombies, lickers, and dying hotel guests. When the group reaches the Apple Inn's front lobby, they fight a half-transformed licker known as Suspended, which appears to be a zombie-licker hybrid. Soon after the Suspended's death, a firefighter breaks open the door and helps all the remaining survivors out of the Apple Inn. Once outside, a firefighter gives the survivors updates on the current state of the city, while other firefighters begin to put out fires in the surrounding streets. Soon after, the nearby Raccoon City Zoo has been scavenged by zombies, and now the streets are filled with deceased animals. A survivor named Cindy Lennox finds her way to the gates of the Raccoon Zoo, and finds a note on a sign nearby mentioning an evacuation chopper. Looking at the map, Cindy finds out that she must travel through the zoo to reach the chopper. Her and a group of survivors unlock the gate and enter the deserted park, only to be attacked by a rogue zombie elephant. After escaping it, they explore the park in search of Mr. Raccoon medals, which are required to activate the power. Throughout the zoo, the survivors encounter many zombified animals, including alligators, birds, and lions. Eventually, the group lures the zombie elephant into a big arena and traps it. This doesn't last long, however, as the elephant quickly breaks free and continues its pursuit of the survivors. Once the group finally escapes the zoo, the zombie elephant rams through the walls and confronts them on the Raccoon City streets. After defeating the creature, they make it to a tram and attempt to make their way out of the city. However, the tram stops violently as a rescue helicopter crashes nearby. Later, a group of survivors run past countless zombies roaming the streets of Raccoon City and race towards a subway entrance. While taking refuge, they realize that they can use one of the subway trains to escape, but must search deeper to unravel more clues. Eventually, the group circles back to the train, only to be greeted by a big, mutated flea that lunges into battle against them. After defeating the creature, they hear an announcement of an oncoming train. The train derails and crashes into some debris blocking the track, which causes a massive fire. Before the survivors choke, the sprinkler systems activate and hose down the raging inferno. The survivors proceed in the other functionable train and get ready to finally leave the station. However, a massive flea suddenly smashes one of the windows and kidnaps one of the survivors. The others rush to save the person, but quickly realize that the only way to get out of the subway was to kill the creature and get away by train. After a long, difficult battle, they take down the horrifying creature with pure firepower and finally escape. Unfortunately, this doesn't take them far, as the train stops at blocked tracks near the Arklay Mountains, forcing them to move on foot, still not escaping the outbreak. Soon after, a group of survivors take refuge in an old cabin in the Arklay Mountains. A mysterious man by the name of Al enters the cabin and welcomes them, warning them of the dangers outside and offering to guide them through the woods. Leading the group to an abandoned hospital, Albert suddenly disappears, leaving the group to explore on their own. Upon entering the hospital, they are chased by Albert, who is now wearing a mask and equipped with an axe. They find out that the old man has tricked them into coming there, with hopes to chop them up and feed them to a malicious plant that is consuming the hospital. The survivors begin to explore the building and destroy all the throbbing parts of the monstrous plant, leading to its main core to be activated in the basement. After a long battle with the plant core, the survivors manage to defeat it and are able to escape the hospital just before it collapses. Meanwhile, Albert arrives at the core to see his dead wife spit out of the plant. In his last moments, he holds his wife and stays with her till the end when the hospital ultimately collapses. Later, a small group of survivors take shelter at the abandoned Raccoon General Hospital. Dr. Hirsch walks in on them in room 301 by accident and suggests they leave the building immediately, claiming it's not as safe as they think and that he plans to leave as well. With power to the elevators having suddenly gone out, Hirsch leaves to turn it back on. Upon successfully activating the power, he is attacked by a new creature known as Leechman, and ultimately murdered in the process. Soon after, the survivors trap the Leechman in the safe chamber and set the controls to high, which causes the creature to die from the intense heat. Eventually, the group reaches the underground and finds a boat. The three get in and begin their escape from the hospital, but are quickly halted by something blocking their path. With no other option, the survivors abandon ship and watch as their boat crashes and explodes into what is revealed to be a leech hive. A massive creature known as Queen Leech appears ready to wipe out the group, but is ultimately unsuccessful as the survivors work together to defeat the creature and continue on foot to escape the sewers. Shortly after, an Umbrella researcher in Nest moves backwards to a large capsule before being shot by a female colleague named Monica. Meanwhile, a survivor named Yoko Suzuki leads other survivors George Hamilton and Alyssa Ashcroft to the facility's escape tunnel at the bottom of the lab. Researcher Monica opens the gate and comes face to face with Yoko, holding her at gunpoint while revealing herself to be a longtime colleague of Yoko. As they exchange words, Monica steals Yoko's ID card and flees the area with a large case. Upon reaching the elevator lift, Monica is ambushed by a G embryo that enters her body, causing her to fall to the floor and pass out. The survivors, meanwhile, begin to explore the facility and eventually defreeze the control panel to get the elevator lift working again. The group heads to the lift, and Yoko uses a key dropped by Monica into a nearby panel to activate the elevator. As the lift rises with Yoko, Alyssa, and George on the locomotive, Monica rises from the ground and her chest bursts open with a G larvae, killing her instantly. The larvae makes its way up to the lift and forces its way through by making a hole in the metal flooring. Here, the larvae mutates uncontrollably and grows to a fully formed G adult. Forced to engage the creature in battle, the survivors team up to take it out, and once defeated, they board the locomotive and escape the area. Later, the Raccoon police station has been completely overtaken by zombies, and Lieutenant Marvin Branagh and a group of survivors begin to make plans to escape through a series of tunnels under the station. They realize that Rita Phillips is the only officer small enough, making it her mission to get to the other side and send help back for the others. Marvin entrusts the survivors with finding plates to open the passage, and when done so, Rita heads out for help. Making it out of the tunnel, Rita finds Officer Harry, who is driving a van. The two begin to make their way to the front of the station, while Rita contacts Marvin to gather all remaining survivors to the entrance. Marvin then calls on the station's intercom, informing everyone of their escape plan. While the survivors are waiting at the entrance, a massive group of zombies break in and rush towards the group. After fending off the creatures for a few minutes, Harry and Rita arrive and call on everyone to board the van. Marvin is bitten by zombies during the confrontation and chooses to stay behind to save the rest of the group. Elsewhere in Raccoon City, Jill Valentine wakes up in her apartment and receives a frantic phone call from Brad Vickers. While he is warning her to leave the city, a tyrant bioweapon named Nemesis breaks through the wall and kicks her to the ground. After getting a few shots off at the creature, Jill flees her room and is pursued by Nemesis throughout the apartment. Eventually, she is forced to the bottom level and manages to escape the building just in time as Nemesis darts towards her with a massive block of concrete. Once outside, the exit is closed off by a ton of debris, allowing her to escape the creature and begin investigating the streets of Raccoon City. Making it out of the alleyway, Jill encounters Brad, who explains that while he doesn't know what the creature is, he is aware that it's after the remaining STARS members in Raccoon City. Making their way through the town, zombies break down nearby barricades and force the pair to retreat inside a bar. Brad holds the door to prevent zombies from entering, but in the process is bitten by one. He quickly realizes there's no time and tells Jill she must escape and that she mustn't screw up like he did. While Brad sacrifices his life to hold off the zombies, Jill leaves the bar and is eventually spotted by a helicopter that tells her to head to the top of the parking garage building for pickup. Making her way into a storage room, she finds a terrified man named Dario Rosso, who locks himself in a storage container for safety, and she fails to convince him to escape with her. Arriving in the parking garage, she makes her way past several zombies and takes an elevator to the roof, where the helicopter awaits. However, just before she could board, the chopper blows blows up, and Nemesis emerges from the shadows. With the creature closing in on her, she uses a nearby car to ram into it, and they end up falling off the building in the process. Jill manages to crawl out of the wreckage before the car explodes, but right after, Nemesis appears with its mask torn away from the flames, now revealing its true identity. Before the creature can reach Jill, Carlos arrives and fires a rocket at it. Here, Nemesis shows off its true strength, as it was able to catch the rocket and redirect it with its tentacles. Carlos then fires at the creature a second time, which now lands and briefly halts the creature, allowing him to take Jill to the subway station for shelter. Here, Carlos tells her that he is part of the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service, a private military force that specializes in rescue operations. After hearing this, Jill lashes out at Carlos, saying that Umbrella was responsible for the chaos occurring in Raccoon City, but having left no choice, she decides to go with him to the bottom of the subway station. Once they arrive, he introduces her to Captain and Platoon Leader Mikhail Victor, who asks her for help in evacuating some survivors via the subway train. Jill reluctantly agrees, but only because she wishes to save the civilians and not the UBCS members. Carlos then hands her a radio, informing her that they should stay in touch, and is told to head to street level to find supplies and gear up. After this, she is instructed by Carlos to get the subway infrastructure back online, and he navigates her through the city to reach the transmission tower. Once she reaches the main road, he then tells her to go through the alley, but Jill discovers it has been set ablaze, forcing her to traverse the streets and alleys to look for a fire hose to put out the fire. After making her way through the alley, she enters a building to find an injured UBCS officer named Murphy Seeker. Before she can treat him, Nikolai appears from behind and shoots the officer in the head. Shocked and outraged, she angrily tells him that he might have not been infected, but he retaliates by taunting her, saying that all of the STARS members are soft, and suggests that she go back to the subway station, as she would only get in the way of their operation. Jill then proceeds to the transmission tower and notices a cocoon-like nest is laying on top of the cables. She goes outside to begin restoring power, but is quickly ambushed by a drained Deimos and forcefully impregnated by it, forcing her to use an herb to flush out the embryo. After fending off more drained Deimos and resetting all the circuit breakers, she re-enters the building and restores the power at the substation, destroying the nest in the process. As Jill heads back to the streets, Nemesis ambushes her by breaking through a nearby wall and pursuing her throughout the city. After narrowly avoiding the creature, Jill informs Carlos that Nemesis is still alive. Carlos tells her to come back to the station, but she refuses to return until she gets traffic control online again. Finally reaching her destination, Carlos instructs her to plot out a route from Redstone Street to Fox Park Station. After doing this, Jill then heads back to the station. Here she meets up with Carlos, Nikolai, and Tyrell, where Nikolai informs all of them that there is no chance of fighting their way out of the city, as it is filled with T-infected creatures. Nikolai notices Jill and again taunts her, telling Carlos that she is unreliable and will get him killed. Nemesis then storms into action and Jill shuts the gate, deciding to use herself as bait to draw the creature away and hopefully buy the others some time. After luring the creature deeper into the subway, Jill escapes through a ventilation duct and heads into the sewers. Attempting to contact Carlos, she gets no signal and chooses to head for the surface. She navigates through the sewers to get into the city above, and upon exploring, she encounters numerous Hunter Gamma bioweapons that were smuggled into Raccoon City by an Umbrella scientist. Eventually reaching the top, she contacts Carlos again, who is relieved to hear that she is alive and informs her that they will leave when she gets back. Jill climbs up a ladder to reach street level, but is quickly grabbed and thrown by Nemesis. It then proceeds to chase her with its brand new flamethrower, forcing her to evade its attacks by ascending the building she is in. Escaping to the rooftop, she is confronted by the creature and forced into a duel. After destroying its fuel tank and halting the creature, Jill jumps off the building to escape the explosion and lands on a lift that quickly snaps and forces her to the ground. Believing she finally killed the creature, Jill radios Carlos and informs him that it's dead. Carlos then tells her that the subway is ready to go and to hurry back so they can leave. Jill cuts through Kendo's gun shop to reach the station and is jumped by a gun-wielding Robert Kendo. She is relieved to see that he is alright and suggests that he comes with her to the station. Kendo sadly refuses, reassuring her that he will be alright and bids her goodbye. Soon after, Jill is attacked by Nemesis yet again, now wielding a rocket launcher with a laser guiding system. Carlos radios again, telling her he knows how to slow it down, and that she has to lead it back to the station. Making her way back, Nemesis fires a rocket at a massive boulder on top of a building, causing it to fall off and roll towards Jill. As she narrowly dodges the debris, she presses onto the station, still being pursued by Nemesis in the process. Jill finds Carlos in the alleyway, and he guides her and the creature to his Claymore trap. The two then quickly head into the station, and Carlos fires at the gasoline truck just before the door closes, which explodes and halts the creature. The pair move to the subway underground and meet up with the other UBCS members, where Mikhail praises Jill for her actions. Meanwhile, the captain orders Carlos and Tyrell to head back to the city and find Dr. Nathaniel Bard, whose vaccine research could save the city. Nikolai, waiting inside the train, praises Jill, saying that she is learning that all that matters is her own life. Following this, everyone boards the train and they begin their escape from the doomed city. While leaving, Nemesis storms onto the train, killing all the civilians that took shelter inside. Outraged by this, Jill attempts to attack the creature, but Mikhail stops her and instructs her to get to the back of the train. However, Nikolai locks the door, trapping Jill and the injured Mikhail with the assailant. Mikhail fires a few rounds at Nemesis, but is quickly pierced and pulled face to face with the creature. He then uses a C4 detonator in a final sacrifice to try and destroy the tyrant, separating them from the subway car Jill is in. Her car then begins derailing and she flies into the wall of the train, which ultimately knocks her unconscious. 23 minutes later, Carlos and Tyrell arrive at the RPD, where they witness Lieutenant Marvin Branagh getting bit by a zombified Brad. Marvin then runs back into the station, locking the door, and Carlos runs in to eliminate the zombie. They enter the RPD and search for Dr. Bard, who is apparently inside the STARS office according to the data they received. On his way, Carlos encounters the lickers and zombies that have overrun the station, but manages to reach the office and contact Bard, who reveals that he has escaped and is now trapped at the hospital that is filled with bioweapons and zombies. Bard reveals that Umbrella is killing all of the researchers because they are witnesses that might incriminate the company by revealing their illegal activities and its connection to the outbreak. He then urges them to get him out before ending the call. Tyrell then hacks the computer and tries to trace Bard's location, and at the same time, Carlos receives a transmission from Jill, who informs him that everyone on the train is dead and that Nikolai left them to die. Carlos then rushes to Jill's location, while Tyrell stays behind to track Bard's location. Several minutes earlier, Jill crawls out of the subway car and attempts to contact Carlos, but is out of range. She eventually reaches the city park and hears the roaring pain of Nemesis. Crossing the walkway bridge, she spots a burning Nemesis tumble his way down the riverbank, and contacts Carlos afterwards, informing him of what has transpired after he left. In the midst of the call, a mutated Nemesis emerges from the river and confronts her. Jill runs from it until she is cornered in the plaza and is forced to fight. She knocks the creature out with the explosive rounds after a long duel, but before she can leave the area, Nemesis wakes up and grabs her by the feet until she shoots the chain that is holding the metal gate, which falls and amputates the arm of the Nemesis. However, it regrows the arm in the form of a tentacle and infects Jill by impaling her arm with a bone spike, causing her to fall to the ground and lose consciousness. Nikolai appears smiling and thanks her for doing him a big favor. Meanwhile, a tired truck driver hauling oil drives through the plains of Arklay County, entirely unaware of the recent quarantine of Raccoon City, and eats a burger while listening to a talk radio program featuring an eyewitness to zombies. While distracted with the radio, the truck plows straight into what seems like a woman walking on the highway. Panicked and scared, the driver gets out of the truck to inspect the situation and examines the victim, whom he believes is dead. Turning his back to the zombie, it suddenly gets up and rips him apart. Elsewhere in the plains, Claire Redfield drives her motorcycle into Raccoon City and searches for her brother Chris, stopping off at a nearby gas station to fill up on gas. Upon hearing a smashing sound inside the store, Claire enters and finds a police officer being ripped apart by a zombie. Realizing the danger she's in, Claire escapes and heads back to the front of the store, where she meets rookie police officer Leon Kennedy, who tells her to duck as he fires at a zombie right behind her. The two head outside and find a group of zombies zombies flocking the surrounding area, forcing them to dodge the horde and rush to the deputy's car, where they then escape the area and head into the city. Driving through the ruined streets, Leon and Claire discover the only people in sight are zombies, but overhear from a pre-recorded announcement that refugees are to head to the Raccoon police station for shelter. Once the car reaches a dead end, they realize they must continue on foot, but before they could exit the vehicle, the pair is ambushed by zombies that prevent their escape. As the zombies begin to break in, the wounded truck driver from earlier drives towards them as he loses consciousness and swerves off the road to avoid a direct collision. Leon and Claire escape the burning police car shortly before it ignites the oil leaking from the wrecked truck, causing a massive explosion. Separated by the burning remains of the truck, Leon and Claire confirm their safety to each other before independently setting off for the station. Claire arrives first and views the camera footage to witness an officer fending off a nearby zombie as he shouts that he has found a way out. Claire heads to his location and hopes to save him, but unfortunately is a little too late as the nearby zombie reaches the officer and rips him in half as Claire attempts to pull him away. She then grabs his notebook, which shows the way out, and then proceeds back to the main hall. Here she is saved by Officer Marvin when a zombie manages to get a hold of her. Marvin reveals to her that Chris is currently away on vacation and shows her a secret passage to escape the station. After exploring the station and fending off some zombies, Marvin radios Claire back to the main hall and shows her camera footage that reveals Leon is alive outside waiting. Claire begins to head that way and witnesses a police helicopter crash into a second-floor corridor. Once she makes it outside, her and Leon finally reunite and begin to catch up on each other's current situations. This doesn't last long, however, as zombies begin to flock the outside area, forcing Leon to escape and look for a key to open the gate. Eventually, Claire finds 3 medals and uses them to open the secret passage, allowing her to head underground and escape the station. Marvin stays behind and refuses to go, as he knows that he is about to become a zombie. Making her way through the tunnels, Claire finds a young girl named Sherry who warns her of a massive creature lurking from behind. This creature was in fact William Birkin, and he smashes into the floorboard, causing Claire to fall below and be forced into a battle with him. After dealing enough damage, the creature is halted and it falls off the ledge, going deeper into the underground. Sherry lowers the ladder for Claire after she agrees to help find her mother, and the two begin to head to the surface. Once they reach the parking garage, Police Chief Brian Irons arrives and forces Claire to the ground while Sherry ties her hands. Irons then kidnaps Sherry and takes her to the nearby orphanage, while Claire is forced to look for another way out once the gate closes on her. She heads back to the station to look for the parking garage key and is confronted and chased by a new tyrant in the process. Later, Irons calls Claire and demands that she head to the orphanage and bring him Sherry's pendant. She agrees and begins to head there in hopes of saving Sherry. Shortly after, Leon arrives at the parking garage and is attacked by an aggressive zombie dog bioweapon. Ada Wong arrives just in time to save him and reveals that she is FBI just before leaving. Leon heads to the nearby prison and finds investigator Ben Bertolucci, who tries to explain to him that he was in prison for attempting to reveal Chief Irons' connections with Umbrella and their corrupt operation. He tries to bargain with Leon by opening the cell in exchange for the parking key. However, he refuses the offer as he wants to talk with Irons first. Ben is then brutally murdered by Tyrant T-00, who breaks through the concrete wall and crushes his face. Ada returns, warning Leon how dangerous the situation is, and tells him to look for a way out just before disappearing yet again. Leon heads back to the station to find 2 electronic components and is confronted and pursued by T-00 throughout. Returning back to the prison, he uses the electronic components to activate the power and obtain Ben's keycard. Returning back to the parking garage, the tyrant breaks through a nearby wall and confronts Leon, but Ada returns to save him again by ramming the creature into the wall with a SWAT truck. The two use Ben's key to escape the area, and they begin to explore the streets of Raccoon City. Making their way through a gun shop, Leon is confronted and held at gunpoint by Robert Kendo. Kendo wants nothing to do with Leon and is angry over the RPD's failure to control the situation. They are distracted by his 10-year-old daughter Emma, who is infected and close to becoming a zombie. After begging the two to leave him and his daughter alone, Leon expresses his frustrations to Ada that he wants to take down Umbrella and save the city from this outbreak. The two decide to team up and they begin to make their way into the sewers to continue continue their investigation. Meanwhile, Sherry is trapped in the orphanage and begins to look for a way out. She eventually finds the key, but is caught by Irons before she can grab it. Sherry throws a bottle of acid in his face and flees back to the playroom to hide from her predator. After Irons searches the area, he unlocks the door to a nearby bathroom to wash his face, allowing Sherry to sneak in and grab the keys. Chasing her through the orphanage, Irons eventually gets a hold of Sherry, but before he can do anything, William Birkin arrives and implants him with a G embryo. Shortly after, Claire arrives at the orphanage and is confronted by the now wounded Irons. After blaming Claire for what happened, the G embryo rejects his body and explodes out of his stomach, killing him instantly. Claire eventually finds Sherry in the underground, and the two are pursued by T-00. Once they reach the elevator, William Birkin arrives and impales the tyrant with his claws. Birkin then jumps on top of the elevator, and they all fall down into the sewers. Shortly after, Claire is woken up by Annette Birkin, who investigates the area just before leaving. Making her way deeper into the sewers, Claire eventually finds Sherry, who is trapped in a massive waste disposal room, and begins to explore the surrounding area for a way to reach her. After connecting 6 chest plugs to the correct circuit box and unlocking the door, Claire is confronted yet again by a mutated William Birkin that engages her in battle. After accessing a massive crane, Claire uses a shipping container to knock William off the ledge, allowing her to head back and finally reach Sherry. Annette reveals that the child was infected by William and informs Claire that she can be treated in the underground lab at Nest. Claire then carries Sherry to the cable car, and the two begin to make their way down to Nest. During this, Claire gives her jacket to Sherry for warmth and begins to comfort her. Meanwhile, Leon and Ada begin to explore the sewers and are eventually confronted by a massive alligator bioweapon that chases them deeper underground. However, it's quickly eliminated by Leon once he fires at flammable gas that blows the creature's head off. The pair eventually finds Annette and demand a sample of the G-Virus. Annette denies the request and runs away while firing at the two, injuring Leon in the process. Ada goes after her and is eventually trapped in an incinerator, but is quickly able to escape after disarming 3 hidden switches. Later, she falls down a bridge and gets stabbed in the leg by debris, making her unable to walk. After some time, Leon wakes up and begins to look for Ada, and eventually finds her injured and trapped in a massive waste disposal room. Ada explains that the samples they need are located at Nest, and the two make their way to the cable car and head down to the underground lab. On the way down, they share a kiss before going their separate ways. Meanwhile, Claire carries Sherry to Nest and sets her down in a room to begin looking for a cure. After retrieving the antiviral agent, she is soon after confronted by William yet again. Annette arrives as well to take him down, but things only get more out of hand as she is quickly thrown to a wall and William begins to mutate further and further. Claire decides to stay behind and fight the creature, while Annette leaves to administer the cure to Sherry. After defeating the creature, Claire enters the room to find that Sherry has successfully recovered. Annette, however, was seriously wounded from William's attack and is unable to go on. She gives Claire a wristband that has access to the entirety of Nest and requests that she get Sherry to safety. She then apologizes to her daughter for everything and says her goodbyes while the lab's self-destruct time is activated. Claire and Sherry then head out to escape the facility. Prior to Annette's death, Leon arrives to Nest and recovers a sample of G. Soon after, he finds a wounded Annette, who reveals that Ada has been hiding the truth from him, that she's actually a mercenary and plans to sell the G-Virus to the highest bidder. After hearing this, Leon confronts Ada about the accusations, which causes her to pull a gun on him. Annette then arrives and fires at Ada in hopes of preventing the G-Virus from spreading. Ada falls and is quickly grabbed by Leon in hopes of saving her. However, she ultimately lets go and falls into the abyss. With the self-destruct time activated, Leon sets out to escape the facility. He calls Claire, who is in the process of activating a train so they can all escape, but Leon tells her to go on without him. While Claire is activating the train, William Birkin returns, now mutated even further, and engages in another battle. After putting the creature down, Claire activates the train and she sets off with Sherry to escape the lab. Meanwhile, after calling Claire, Leon is attacked and pursued by T-00 throughout the facility. After the creature takes massive damage from surrounding explosions, its power limiter then deactivates, causing it to mutate into the Super Tyrant form. Shortly after, it catches up to Leon and confronts him on a lift where a final battle commences. However, the fight is short-lived once Ada tosses down a rocket launcher to Leon, allowing him to fire at the creature and obliterate it. As Leon moves forward, he spots the train Claire activated and manages to jump on before it passes. He meets up with Claire and Sherry, but their conversation is quickly halted by a massive shake from the train. Leon goes to the back to investigate, where William Birkin appears in his final stage ready to attack its prey. After buying Claire time to detach the back carriage, Leon stabs Birkin's eye with a sharp piece of metal and jumps to the other train carriage before separating. The group then watches as William is finally destroyed for good from the nest explosion. Finally escaping the city, the group begins walking down a highway in the plains, thinking about what to do next. They spot a truck driver heading towards Raccoon City, and Leon prepares to shoot, thinking that he could be infected like the other truck driver. However, the driver simply flips him off and continues on his way. Leon and Claire both decide that they will put an end to Umbrella for what happened, and the three decide to stick together for now. Afterwards, Umbrella operative Hunk wakes up in the sewer after his entire unit is attacked and killed by the mutated William Birkin. Still in possession of the G-Virus sample, he contacts Nighthawk and requests an extraction point to be picked up. Making his way through the sewers and RPD, Hunk reaches the front gate of the station and gets picked up by a helicopter, ultimately succeeding in his mission of the G-Virus retrieval. Sometime later, Carlos finds Jill on the streets of Raccoon City and begins to carry her to the Spencer Memorial Hospital, hoping Dr. Bard could cure her. Carlos manages to reach the hospital, puts Jill down on the bed in the makeshift sick room, and begins to explore the building in search of the vaccine. He finds and enters the office of Dr. Bard and finds him dead with a gunshot wound to the head, having been assassinated by Nikolai. Carlos finds a computer that contains an old video recording of Bard, where he reveals that all of Raccoon City's suffering began with the release of the T-Virus. His employer, Umbrella, engineered the virus and ordered their team to develop a vaccine, but the executives wanted to destroy the vaccine in an effort to erase any evidence that the virus existed. After the tape ends, Carlos obtains the vaccine and rushes back to the front of the hospital to use on Jill. Tyrell arrives sometime later and turns on the TV to reveal an announcement that the zombie outbreak is uncontainable, and on October 1st, the US government will launch a missile strike, eradicating the virus along with the city. They urge the survivors who are still alive to get out of the city before the deadline. After the message, a horde of zombies begin to surround the hospital, and Carlos goes outside to fend off the creatures to protect Jill and give Tyrell enough time to hack into the hospital's security system to shut the doors down. Once the zombies break through the front door, Carlos uses a C4 detonator to knock down a pillar that covers the entrance and prevents the zombies from reaching them. He then goes back to the room to find Jill cured from the virus, and quickly storms out telling Tyrell to contact someone in the government to stall the missile strike while he searches for the cure. Later, Jill wakes up in a nightmare to find Carlos, who tells her that the city is now safe and it's finally over. Suddenly, he coughs up blood and nearly turns into a zombie, begging her to pull the trigger as it's the only way. Once Jill is unable to fire, a now zombified Carlos lunges at Jill and begins to rip her apart. She then wakes up from the nightmare and finds that her wound is treated. Turning her attention towards the TV, Jill finds out about the emergency missile strike, which is now just hours away. She walks outside to find Tyrell still trying to get a hold of someone with any clearance to stop the missile strike, and he informs her that Carlos is underground trying to get the stocks of vaccine. She then goes after Carlos and finds a secret complex that leads her to an underground facility. While exploring, she finds an observant Nikolai, who quickly runs away after cutting the power. After reactivating the power, she heads up the elevator and regroups with Tyrell, who got through to the government claiming that they were willing to call off the strike if they deliver the vaccine to them. The two begin to press on and explore further, and are quickly ambushed by the mutated Nemesis again. The creature grabs Tyrell before it impales him with its tentacles. Nemesis then tosses his lifeless body, while Jill makes a run for it and manages to shut the door behind them. After exploring the Nest 2 facility and creating a vaccine, Jill is grabbed by Nemesis. She stabs the creature's tentacle until she is let free and begins to flee from the creature. Making her way to the disposal center, Nemesis follows her and smashes the stairway she's on, causing her to fall and grab onto a ledge while dropping the vaccine. Nikolai suddenly appears and makes a deal that Jill goes down to fight the Nemesis while he records the battle for combat data he can sell, and in return, she will be given back the vaccine. He then sends her down and she begins a fierce battle with the creature. During the ongoing fight, Carlos appears and assists her by spotting Nemesis, and after badly injuring it with weapons, he then drops the crane for Jill for them to regroup. As she climbs on it, Nemesis attempts to attack her again, only to get hit by the crane operated by Carlos, who then floods the center of the area with potent solvents from the tanks, dissolving Nemesis into a bloody pulp in the process. Carlos then drops Jill and tells her that he will meet her up ahead. Eventually catching up to Nikolai, she points her gun at him, demanding the vaccine, but he quickly refuses. During this heated moment, Nemesis bursts into the room as a giant blob, forcing Jill to the ground. Nikolai shouts that the data on this can be worth millions, and bids her good luck before running off. Carlos appears right after, and Jill tells him to go after Nikolai while she deals with the Nemesis one last time. She then opens the compartment containing a high-powered railgun known as Finger, and fires the powerful weapon at the creature, causing massive damage and severely wounding it. However, it's not enough to defeat the creature, and Jill is forced to recharge the railgun by reactivating multiple power sources. After this, she shoves the railgun to Nemesis's mouth and fires one last shot that completely obliterates the creature and ends it for good. Jill then resumes her pursuit of Nikolai, and arriving on the roof, she finds Carlos knocked unconscious. Nikolai then knocks Jill's gun out of her hand and tosses her the vaccine canister only to shoot it, thus dooming the city. Outraged by this, she asks him if he has any idea what he had just done, but he only responds that he doesn't care, as his client asked him to reduce Umbrella to rubble. Nikolai prepares to kill Jill until Carlos tackles him and the two engage in combat. Carlos then puts him in a chokehold and shouts for Jill to shoot him. She is reluctant at first for fear of the bullet hitting Carlos, but finally complies and shoots Nikolai in the shoulder. Jill and Carlos then board a helicopter and decide to leave Nikolai on the roof. He warns her that if he dies, then she will never find out the truth. However, Jill responds that she doesn't mind a little detective work, and so her and Carlos board the helicopter, seemingly leaving Nikolai to die with the city. Sometime later, they are in the outskirts of town as Jill witnesses a missile fired by the US government that completely obliterates Raccoon City. After pondering on everything that happened, she decides that the city's ashes would be Umbrella's ashes as well, and is now determined to take down Umbrella for their unlawful actions. Prior to the explosion, scientist Greg Mueller wakes up his tyrant creation known as Thanatos, and gives it clear instructions to defend him from Umbrella troops, as he had betrayed Umbrella and used the company for his own benefits. Shortly after, survivor George Hamilton sees a note from his friend Peter Jenkins, asking for his help at the university, claiming that he has vital information about the current status of the city crisis. George takes a group of survivors with him to the university, and they quickly find Peter killed by a gunshot to the back of the head. His notes suggest that he was working on an antivirus called Daylight, which eliminates the T-virus infection from the body. A drug synthesizer is said to be located in the third-floor lab, and the survivors spread out to locate the 3 components necessary to generate the antivirus. While exploring, a Hunter Gamma bioweapon breaks out of confinement and rushes towards the group where it is either killed or avoided. Meanwhile, a team of mercenaries from the UBCS encounter Thanatos. Nikolai appears and fires a capsule at the creature in an attempt to retrieve a blood sample. However, the creature resists and quickly annihilates the entire groundside UBCS team before heading back indoors. Nikolai watches the creature flee as he begins crafting new plans to take out the creature. Later, Thanatos breaks through the glass at the university and confronts the group of survivors for the first time. Eventually luring it to faulty wiring, the group electrocutes the creature, allowing them to retrieve a sample of T-blood that will be used to create the antivirus. Upon reaching the lab and finally synthesizing the vaccine, the power to the machine is cut. Looking around on the 3rd floor, they are eventually confronted by scientist Greg. He introduces himself and reveals his plans to have them killed by Thanatos to gather data. Suddenly, Greg is shot through the head by Nikolai, allowing the survivors to escape with the antivirus as Nikolai starts the timer for a series of charges planted around the university. The survivors quickly reach the outside of the university just as it explodes, and a rescue helicopter circles around and spots the group, calling on them to meet up at the courtyard for pickup. On their way, the group is forced to deal with Thanatos, who has survived the explosion and mutated into a 12-foot tall super tyrant. Eventually halting the creature, the survivors press on and finally reach the courtyard, only to be ambushed by Thanatos one last time. After dealing massive damage, the creature ultimately falls for good. The helicopter then rescues them, and they escape the city as it is bombed. Before the explosion, a rogue USS squad operator named Captain Rodriguez is ready to abandon Raccoon City in a Chinook carrying a stolen BOW. His passenger, Linda Baldwin, an Umbrella researcher, refuses to go just yet and rushes to the Umbrella Development Center to obtain an antiretroviral drug that could prevent a global T-virus outbreak. At the center, a group of survivors arrive and save Umbrella researcher Carter from a zombie who entered the building's premises. Right after, Linda shows up, only to almost be attacked by a survivor who mistakes her for a zombie. As Linda and Carter discuss what to do, a group of experimental hunter moves escape confinement and begin to run rampant in the facility, which causes an alarm to go off and put the building into lockdown. Researcher Carter begins work on activating Tyrant R, with the intent of using it to kill the hunters to clean an escape route. He boasts about being able to kill the Tyrant if it rebels, as he is in possession of a trigger to a bomb planted on the creature's back. The Tyrant does indeed rebel soon after and attacks Carter, breaking an antivirus sample in the process. It then pushes Linda off the edge and down into the water treatment plant below, and begins to pursue the survivors throughout the facility. The group successfully escapes the area and travels into the water treatment plant, where they find an unconscious Linda lying on the floor of the drainage area, who explains to them that the virus spreading around the city was created by Umbrella. Right after, an influx of water begins to flow through the facility's tunnels, sweeping Linda down the sewers. Now injured, she crawls out of the tunnels and reaches the entrance of the Apple Inn, where she is mistaken for a zombie and shot by UBCS platoon leader Arnold, who has been ordered by Umbrella to kill Captain Rodriguez and recover the bioweapon he stole. The other survivors later escape out of the water treatment plant and reach the streets, where they are then quickly met by a now mutated Tyrant R that begins to pursue them all the way to the Apple Inn. It's here that the survivors find Linda severely wounded and begin to carry her through the city streets looking for a way to escape. Elsewhere, Captain Rodriguez starts his Chinook and begins to fly away with the experimental bioweapon. However, while leaving, a missile is fired at the aircraft, causing Rodriguez to take a sharp turn, which causes the cargo carrying the bioweapon to detach and fall to the ground. With no other option, he decides to leave it and continues his escape of the city. Shortly after, a group of UBCS soldiers cautiously approach the dropped cargo, only to be slaughtered by the bioweapon inside known as Nyx, who breaks out and begins to absorb all the soldiers. The survivors arrive right after and are greeted by Nyx, who proceeds to absorb the nearby Tyrant R and begins a battle against the group. After defeating the difficult creature, the group takes Linda to a nearby truck and they all proceed to escape the city. Elsewhere, Ada begins to traverse through the sewers after having escaped Nest, looking for a way out of the city. She exits by climbing up the manhole on the street and enters the Apple Inn to meet with her contact from the rival company, only to find him dead from suicide. A nearby computer in the room activates, allowing Albert Wesker to communicate with Ada, claiming that she has failed by betraying the agency and aiding Leon. However, after revealing she managed to recover a tissue fragment from William Birkin that contains the G-virus, Wesker then informs her that Raccoon City will be obliterated by a missile at dawn, and that Ada's only chance of escape will be to hitch a ride on a helicopter carrying Umbrella executive Sergei Vladimir out of town. Ada then exits the inn and uses her grapple gun to flip over a pile of flaming wreckage that is blocking one of the streets, and after fighting her way through a building full of zombies and bioweapons, she finally reaches an overpass. Here, she fights and defeats the Tyrant R that was previously absorbed and fought by a group group of survivors. After the tyrant's death, Ada uses her grapple gun to pull herself onto the large package being carried by the Umbrella helicopter, allowing her to successfully escape the city. Click this video here to find out the disturbing lore of every Resident Evil enemy. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.